Two tragedies have happened recently. A school shooting in Minneapolis and a school shooting in Denver, the Denver metro area. Both of these have a certain significance particular to me because I was born in Minneapolis. I lived there until I was about 5 years old, and I lived in Denver from 2016 to 2020. And obviously my life began in Minneapolis, and in Denver I had some of the most transformative experiences of my life. Both of those cities hold a special place in my heart. Not entirely for good, but mostly for good. I mostly treasure the memories of those places. And so now that now that there have been these tragedies there, just within this last month, 2 school shootings, which sadly it's not an uncommon thing anymore. Sadly, school shootings have become such a common thing that they're almost beginning to numb us. We're beginning to grow numb, and if not disinterested, we're getting desensitized to the horror of them, to the impact of them. They've just become such a commonplace thing, such an everyday kind of tragedy that it just doesn't have the impact that it did when all of this really began with the Columbine school shootings. That's where this kind of culture of school shootings began. It was with Columbine. And I was too young to really appreciate what the significance of that growing up was. And it was only until I was a little older that I had heard of it that I sort of gained a better appreciation of what an impact that made on American culture. And the thing of it is, and this is bitter medicine that no one, some kind of animal rustling around down there. Maybe we'll see what it is. The bitter medicine that no one wants to swallow, that no one wants to accept, that no one wants to face up to when it comes to stopping school shootings, or at least decreasing the rate at which they occur, is that it's all about infamy. It's all about these people, these shooters. It's all about these mass killers wanting infamy. They want to achieve posthumous immortality by gaining the infamy of a killer. They want to become so infamous, so reviled, that they a cult of personality springs up around them spontaneously. They want the infamy because they know it will grow into a twisted kind of fame. They know that it will give them the opportunity for a twisted kind of fame. They know that sadly there are people out there who idolize any kind of twisted, murderous villain that you can think of. If there's some kind of twisted, murderous villain out there, someone is going to idolize them and worship them. Which, I mean, is sick, but it is also just human nature. Those who see no opportunity to grow in the light will seek growth in the dark. They will seek a different kind of growth. They'll seek a different kind of notoriety, of recognition. They'll recognize that they can't, or perhaps they could, but they don't want to put in the work, the effort. They don't really care enough to gravitate towards the light. They don't want to risk not being famous in their lifetime. So they will take the guarantee, speaking metaphorically, the devil's bargain of guaranteed infamy, rather than risk losing out on the gamble to become famous. They, because getting recognition for doing good things, or, and perhaps not like good in the sense of highly moral things, but good in the sense of becoming extremely accomplished or famous for things you've done that are laudable. The thing with that is that it is much harder than gaining recognition by doing terrible things, and it is also much harder. I mean, it's harder, and it's not a guarantee. If you do something terrible, if you commit an act of terrorism, or a mass kill, like a senseless mass killing or something like that, sadly, it is pretty much a guarantee of infamy. In most cases, that is going to get people to pay attention. Because, when it's something horrible, people can't usually help but look towards it. If we see something terrible, if we see some atrocity, some horrible tragedy, we just, as human beings, we can't really help but pay attention to that. Our attention just gravitates towards it. Whereas if it's something good, if it's something beautiful, well, beauty is so much in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? We all have different perspectives on what's beautiful, what's good, what's laudable, what's admirable, what's worthy of celebration. But so if say you work so hard and you give it your all and you risk everything to become an extremely accomplished cellist, and you do, and you achieve greatness as a cellist, and you do it. You achieve a form of immortality, like Yo-Yo Ma or someone like that. Just as an example, someone whose work and whose accomplishments will live on beyond his or her death. So say you achieve this, and you've done it. You've gotten that fame. You've gotten that immortality. You've done everything right. Like the gamble pays off, and you put in all that hard work, and you did it, and that's a great thing. But the downside of that is not everyone appreciates cello music. That not everyone appreciates orchestral music. I mean, most people appreciate music, but what kind of music they like is a very personal thing, and so if you do something great, if you do something really laudable, and you perfect your craft, and you hone your skills to the maximum, and you do everything right, you might, once you reach that pinnacle and you become famous, there's still going to be a lot of people in the world who don't care, who don't, or maybe they might care a little bit, but they don't necessarily appreciate you. They aren't necessarily going to watch or listen to or enjoy your work. They might know your name through cultural osmosis, but they aren't going to actually partake of your art, of your of your accomplishments, of your achievements in whatever field. I mean, incredibly successful scientists that are that are, you know, largely unknown or completely unknown outside of their field. They might have a lot of admirers, and, you know, their colleagues might respect them a great deal, and they might have done great things in the service of science. They might be geniuses. They might have done brilliant work, but when it just comes to the public, when it just comes to people, just in general, most people probably have no idea who these people are. And so there's always that, even if if you do everything right, if you put in all the right work, and you strive for legitimate fame and legitimate recognition, then there's still no guarantee. Even if you do everything right and you accomplish your goals and all the risk and hard work pays off, you might still be somewhat anonymous. I mean, at least to large portions of the population. And the sort of perverse thing about that is that infamy is strangely the opposite in a lot of ways. It's because I think of the most infamous people in history. Very small percentage of the population actively admires these people. Only some disturbed people who idolize serial killers and mass killers and horrible oppressive tyrants and that kind of thing. There's that's what, maybe 10% of the global population. I mean, that might be kind of a pessimistic estimate, but just most people don't like the things that these terrible people, these killers, have. They don't like the things that they've done. They don't like the work that they did, which is good. But at the same time, simultaneously, probably like at least 80% of the population can't help but pay attention to these infamous people. I mean, even when we hear about something dreadful in the news, we kind of can't help but pay attention to one degree or another. I mean, it just, when you see something horrible, something shocking and terrible, that just grabs your attention. Something, I mean, it's along the same lines of why, like scandals and drama and kind of like the seedy underbelly of things entertains people so much. It captivates people so much. It's just human nature. I don't claim to fully understand exactly why that is, but I would hazard to guess that it's mostly about because it's forbidden, because it's bad, because it's something we're not supposed to be interested in. We're not supposed to pay attention to, or maybe not pay attention to, but we're not supposed to be titillated by, I guess. Not in a, not in an erotic way, but just in the sense of like being entertained by it, of being intrigued by it, of it capturing our imaginations. We know we're not supposed to be so entertained by a tragedy. Like and people don't see it. I would imagine most people who do this are not seeing it in the sense, they're not like thinking of it like, oh, I'm being entertained by this. But that, that is what, if we're being honest, that is what's going on. It's people engage with things like that, like it's entertainment. They engage with the most heinous atrocities and they treat it like entertainment. And I'm not judging, I'm not judging anyone for doing that. We all have these kind of like just the morbid curiosity it's just part of human nature. If we're talking on a evolutionary psychology level, I don't know. That's an interesting question as to like why are we intrigued by morbid things? Because on the one hand, we're repulsed by morbidity because it signals danger. And so we are, on an evolutionary level, on a survival level, we are driven away from death and morbidity because because we are generally we are safer if we see, if we were like early man and we are wandering through the plains and we see a pile of human remains, and we're shocked and repulsed by that, and we're made afraid by it on a primal level, then we are going to be, in almost every case, we're going to be better off, we're going to survive longer if we flee from the sight of that. If we take that as a sign of danger, a sign that something killed these people, who are like me, that's not good. I should get out of here. That is the sensible thing that will help you survive better, in primitive humanity, at least. I mean, it's still largely today as well. There are just certain situations in which we have to override it, of course, like medicine and I don't know, I suppose just like mortuary arts and things like that. But so I don't know. It's an interesting question. Why do we? If anyone knows, please tell me, because I am curious about that now. Why is morbid curiosity such a, I would say nigh universal thing in human beings? I mean, whether or not everyone admits it, I think we all have a certain degree of morbid curiosity. Like when we, it's why horror literature and horror fiction is so popular. It's why people are fascinated by true crime and things like that. It's we just, there's something about the darker side of humanity and death, and I guess thinking about it, because I think there is I do think death teaches us a lot about life, and so perhaps that's it. Because I definitely think that death, coming to terms with death, understanding death, satisfying that morbid curiosity, definitely makes us appreciate life more and makes us understand our mortality more. So that's probably it. If anyone has any alternative explanations, I would love to hear it, though. But everyone, well, most people, I would say 90% of people can't help but pay attention to a tragedy, to something terrible, to something morbid, to something gruesome. Like, we just can't help but look at it. And maybe it's because in a survival sense, it captivates. Witnessing something like that captivates our attention so much, because then we have to focus on it in order to survive. That would make sense too. So the sad fact of it is that someone who just wants attention, someone who just wants to be glorified isn't the right word in this case, I guess, because it's not like people are getting glory automatically, but they are getting attention. They are getting they're becoming a kind of celebrity in a twisted sort of way. They're becoming a kind of celebrity, and you're pretty much guaranteed a celebrity if you do something horrifying and shocking and something that people can't help but talk about and pay attention to and look at and think about. If you do that, I mean, it's as I said before, it's kind of in a twisted way. It's sort of the opposite of becoming a celebrity, becoming famous, getting a lot of recognition for something good. Because if you do something good, not everyone will care, or at least not be genuinely interested. They might care, like, you might really respect someone like a great philanthropist. You might really respect a great philanthropist, but are you going to really spend a lot of time thinking about the philanthropist, and like really thinking about the philanthropist's motives and life and goals and everything that shaped that philanthropist? I think, sadly, I mean, most people probably not. I'm trying to think of like of a non-controversial philanthropist or like humanist or something, because most of them, see, they will have some detractor, and like someone will take issue with them, but because the one that comes to mind is like Mother Teresa, but I know that there are some people who don't like her. But just as an example, like this is just an example. I'm not Mother Teresa, famous, famous for doing good, famous for charity, famous for generosity, and many good things. But most people probably know the name. Most people, and she was, admittedly, she was more famous when I was younger. Today, I'm not as sure, just in the public consciousness, to what degree she might be considered famous. But I think most people know the name. I think most people today know who Mother Teresa is. I think they would have the gist of who she is. So even though she's famous, even though people know who she is, and there's kind of like a built-in respect there, do people, just broadly speaking, obsess about her life, and are they like as fascinated by her life and her motives and her goals and just every little detail of why she did the things that she did? Some people certainly are. I mean, and I'm certainly not saying that a small portion, or maybe a medium portion of the population probably is. Like I would imagine, I'm not Catholic, but I would imagine Catholics probably, just generally speaking, are probably much more aware of her and like the details of her life and that kind of thing. They probably study her more. But so there's that portion of people who are really interested in her. But then probably just compared to the general population, there's probably a larger percentage of the general population who is really, really fascinated and really obsessed, even if they don't, idolize these people, like in any perverse way. They probably idolize, or it's not what I meant to say. They probably are fascinated by people like the Columbine killers, or serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy, or like the Menendez brothers are very popular today. Probably a large portion of the general population. I mean, I could be totally wrong about this, but I'm gonna guess 30% of the general population, general American population anyway, is probably pretty intrigued by people like that, pretty fascinated by their lives, and these people probably enjoy true crime stuff, and they really get into thinking about and studying these people, which I'm not judging that. You know, I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong with that, not at all. But people just can't help but, because I mean, it's probably like 5% of the general population, between 5 and 10, that are fascinated by great humanists and their lives, and then probably like 30% of the population that's fascinated by monsters who who commit horrific acts of murder for no reason or for twisted reasons. Like that's probably. I don't think that's unreasonable, and that's kind of sad. It's not a great thing. It's not something that we should applaud ourselves for as a species, but it is natural, and it's also not something. It's not necessarily bad. It's not inherently bad. It just is what it is. I think when you get down to questions of human nature like that, I mean, it's beyond good and evil, because it's just the way we are, and we just need to understand the way we are and try to manage how we are, what we are, and how we behave as best as we can. And and so sadly, you're almost guaranteed an infamous celebrity when you commit a mass killing, which is twisted, and offers a very perverse incentive to do it. And that's my point is, ultimately, is that all of these, or almost all, I'm sure there are some outliers, but almost all mass killers, almost all school shooters are motivated by a desire to achieve posthumous immortality, which is kind of an interesting idea in and of itself. But that's of course what all real immortality is, isn't it? It's posthumous. We die, and yet we live on. We have a form of immortality in the sense of our memory living on, in the sense of our personality living on, in a kind of way in the memories and experiences of others and in history. But almost every mass killer is motivated by that goal. When when everything is boiled down to its fundamentals, that's what people are after. They want the infamy of a mass killer, and they know that they'll get it. They know that it's a guarantee. They know that people can't help but make them famous. Even though people, I'm not saying people are trying to make them famous, but the media and the general public, I mean, we react with horror, and we can't help but look at these things, and we can't help but think about them, and we can't help but obsess about them. It's fascinating in a terrible, horrible way. And so it gives these people what they want. Sadly, it gives these people what they want. It gives the perpetrators of these crimes, it gives them the very recognition and the very celebrity that they crave, that drove them to commit these horrible acts. And so it's a self-perpetuating cycle of horror, because then the next person does it. The next person is going to be inspired by all the infamy and the recognition and the attention that the Minneapolis killer and the Denver killer achieved. And everyone going back in the chain all the way back to Columbine, because that was the genesis of it. It was the genesis of this culture of school shootings, and because of course there were other mass killings before that. Those just weren't quite the same, though. They weren't necessarily motivated by the same kind of totally cynical desire for recognition. I mean, often those people were just wanted to kill first and foremost, and any infamy they got out of it was either not a consideration at all, or it was a distinctly secondary consideration. It just wasn't their main focus. It wasn't what made them do it. They killed because they had other, I mean, it's going to depend on which person we're talking about, but just generally speaking, they had other issues, and they felt the need to kill. And it was a way of just getting back at the world, and of course that's also a large component of the school shootings and things like that, like modern day mass killings. It's also a way of lashing out at the world. That is definitely true. It is also a way of getting revenge on individual people and just the world as a whole, like humanity as a whole as they see it, because because they feel wronged, and sometimes they are, but it doesn't justify it, obviously. Sometimes they are wronged, and sometimes they feel that they have no recourse, really, if they want any kind of, they would see it as justice. Obviously, it's not justice in any real way, but in their warped perception of things, they might see it as the only justice they can get. But ever since Columbine, I maintain, I am very confident in this, that it has been primarily about emulating the Columbine killers. It's been because they were a cultural tsunami. They were a cultural earthquake. They redefined so many things, and it was by doing something terrible. But they became incredibly famous. And I mean, what do you do to dissuade people from trying to follow in their footsteps? Like, what can you really do when people are obsessed with celebrity, when they're obsessed with recognition, when they're obsessed with being seen and being heard and being understood on some level? And that is just this easy ticket to infamy. It is this easy ticket to an upside down, topsy-turvy kind of understanding, and maybe even compassion. If they feel like that's the only way they'll be seen and maybe get some kind of, on some level, no matter how sick and twisted it is, like maybe they think they'll get some kind of compassion, because then people will say, oh my God, how did this happen? And they'll study their lives, and they'll study their thoughts, and they'll try to understand them in a way that quite possibly no one would have if they hadn't done these terrible things, if they hadn't become infamous. And it's entirely possible, as sad as it is, that no one would care, and no one would have cared, at least not, for a long time, at that period of their life. And people, people might not have been willing to try to understand what they were going through as much as people were willing to when they became these icons of horrible acts, of these perpetrators of tragedy, these architects of tragedy. And so what can you possibly say in that kind of situation to dissuade people from doing this? Well, and this is the thing that I think a lot of people don't want to hear. But at the same time, I really think this is the only thing that will fix it, because, some people, and I'm not saying that there isn't some truth to this. I'm not saying that there aren't other things we can try to stop this, try to make it happen less often, because there definitely are. I think we should explore every reasonable course of action that seems like it might actually do something. I think that is good. And I think we should keep having these discussions. But like some people insist that really stringent gun control is the answer. And I think to an extent that might help. Not over the top gun control, but I think perhaps tweaking the laws involving gun control. I think stricter enforcement, stricter background checks, I think these things, perhaps, closing loopholes in the law, maybe. I think there's definitely a conversation to be had about that. Like, I'm open to hearing, whatever anyone's opinion on it. Like, I am open to hearing it, because I don't claim to know in that regard exactly what the best thing to do is. But I think, and then some people say, the solution is more guns. Like, we should arm teachers, and we should have more armed security. I do think armed security is probably a good idea. I mean, the question is, like, whether they will competently do their job. No offense to anyone in the security field, but, I mean, when we have issues with even police officers responding competently to these shootings, and and putting themselves in the line of fire, and I think that's also, it's like, how much can we expect of paid security forces when it's a life and death situation like that? I don't, no offense, I don't mean any offense to anyone working in private security or anyone working in law enforcement. It's just, I think if we're being honest, like, we have had a lot of issues with people protecting schools when it comes down to the line, when it comes down, when everything is on the line. Sometimes it's happened a lot where it doesn't play out the way that it should. It doesn't play out the way that theoretically, we intend it to. And and that's also I think arming teachers is probably not a good idea. It's kind of like the gun control, strict gun control, where it's like, I don't claim to know exactly how that would play out, although I guess some places have done it. I think was there one situation where that did work, where an armed teacher shot the shooter. I could be misremembering that, but yeah. So and that might help in some regards. Private security. I think maybe we should we should create security forces, maybe like state level security forces or something, who are, I guess at that point they would just be another type of law enforcement, but they would be like specialized school police who work exclusively with like campus security and stuff, and there are more of them, and they're like really highly trained for active shooter scenarios and that kind of thing. That's just an idea, but the problem with both of these approaches, like fewer guns or more guns, ultimate, because that's simplifying it, but that's kind of what the two extreme opposing sides are. It's like, let's either try to get rid of all guns, which probably won't work because people will just get guns one way or another. I mean, and I'm not saying like just have it be a free-for-all either, like just because people will get illegal guns, but so on the one side it's like, let's try to restrict guns completely, see if that helps, and then the other extreme side is like, let's just flood the situation with guns, and then the good people with guns will eliminate the bad people with guns. And I'm just not sure that is a great idea, because then it does escalate the potential for more shootings to happen. I mean, it is just going to create more potentially lethal variables floating around in these already complex situations. And so, I don't know that that's the solution either. But my point is that most people go with one of those, I think, and then some people, it's like, take a really strong like mental health angle of it. Like, we need more mental health services and stuff. And I think, you know, to an extent, that's reasonable. I mean, yes, we should have more mental health services. We should try to stop these things in that fashion before they happen, if we can. Like, that is a good goal. That is a good idea. I don't think it will necessarily stop that much. Just because I think ultimately, although mental health issues definitely play a big part in this, as I've said, I think ultimately when it all boils down to its bare essence, I think it's a sadly kind of more of a sane motivation for most of these people. I mean, they might be mentally unstable, and that's why they go down this path. But as I've gone into great detail here, I think ultimately, as you know, as bad as it is not. I mean, it is a sane, rational thought process of, I want infamy. I'm guaranteed infamy by doing this terrible thing. So, and that's, you know, like, I'm guaranteed a celebrity. I'm guaranteed to be talked about. I'm guaranteed attention. I'm guaranteed to be on everyone's lips for, you know, like 2 weeks, a month. I mean, you know, like however long the cycle of everyone getting very passionate about each tragedy like this is. And so it's like, you know, it's the motivation, the desire for infamy in the first place might be motivated by mental instability and mental health issues. That's fair. That's, you know, so it's like, because it's like, it's not necessarily something that a mentally healthy, stable person would set off on a quest to do. But at the end of the day, it is a sane, rational thought process that leads these people down that road. Like, they have a goal, and then they take the sensible, logical, sane, rational approach, you know, in just like from a pragmatic, practical viewpoint, obviously not a moral viewpoint or, you know, like a human viewpoint, but just thinking about it like, okay, I don't care. I'm going to be as ruthless about this as possible. How do I get what I want? And that gets them what they want. And so, you know, I think mental health, more attention to mental health would be good, but I don't think it's going to solve this problem, because ultimately people are doing this because it gets them what they want, because they're not just going crazy and shooting a place up because they've totally gone psychotic. No, they are like emotionally unbalanced and amoral, but they're shooting a place up for revenge and for attention. And I mean, it's sadly, like, that's a very rational thought process. You know, having a rational thought process about something in no way, shape, or form guarantees that you're going to do the ethical thing or the moral thing or even the thing that, like, preserves your life the most, because these people value the infamy and the attention and the posthumous immortality and fame, or infamy and notoriety and celebrity. They value these things much more than their own lives at that point. And so it's a logical deduction and a logical course of action for them. And so I don't think just saying mental health, if we have more social workers, if we have more psychologists and psychiatrists trying to stop these people, I don't think that's the magic bullet, no pun intended, that or you know, I don't think that's just like the panacea for this problem. I don't think that's going to do it. And so the solution that I don't think, you know, I've said this, and some other people have said this. The band Disturbed has a good song about this. What is it called? I can't recall the name of the song, but it's about it's saying that we can't give these people infamy. We shouldn't talk about these people. We shouldn't glorify them. We shouldn't give them what they want. This is the hard truth that I don't think most people are willing to accept, because it's hard, because it's not a magic bullet. It's not a panacea. It's not going to just solve this problem magically. It's not going to do it quickly. It's going to be difficult. And, maybe it's all theoretical. Like, maybe I'm wasting my time, because admittedly, it's probably not legally feasible to force people to, to not name these people. It's probably not, it's probably not realistic. I don't know that this can be done. And admittedly, maybe it's not ultimately ethically justified to force people. Because what I would do, just, if I could just convince everyone to do something about this, what I would do is say, when something terrible like this happens, let's report on it. Let's report on the tragedy. We have to report on this. We have to tell other people what's going on. We have to acknowledge the victims. But let us withhold the name of the perpetrator. Let us just maybe give them an alias, or just refer to them, I don't know, by number or something, but let us not make this tragedy, this grave of the innocent, into an altar for these people, for their sick, death cult. Let's not let them stand on the bodies of their victims and stand up high and become these cultural colossi. Let's not let them become giants of our culture by taking the lives of the innocent. Let's not let their infamy broadcast itself everywhere. Let's not let ourselves be hypnotized by the horror that they unleash. Let's not give them what they want, because that is what they want. That is what they want. We are playing into their hands, and we are giving them what they want. And worse than just giving some monster what he or she wants, worse than that is we are fueling the next crisis. We are fueling the next tragedy. We are laying the foundations for the next mass murder. We are encouraging the next unstable person from doing the same thing all over again and just putting us back where we are now. If we give them the infamy, the recognition, the celebrity that they want, then we are just encouraging the next copycat. We are just encouraging the next person who feels totally desolate and sees no other way out and feels that they have to, this is the only way that they're going to get attention. Because that's what it is. These people feel, it's a mixture of, revenge. Like, they want revenge on the world that they think wronged them and ignored them. And then they also want fame. They want infamy. They want celebrity. And at that point, they don't care about dying. They don't care about what happens to them, except in terms of the public perception. They don't care about anything except how their memory and the memory of their crimes will take root in the minds of others, in our culture, in our discourse. That's all that matters to them at that point. That's what they want. And so if we politicize tragedies, if if we allow ourselves to be distracted and make this about other issues other than the perpetrator, because I think that's a part of it also, is like we should be focusing on the murderer. Not focusing on in the sense of giving them a pulpit or giving them, making them more infamous or anything. I mean focusing on them as in, like, they are the ones who did this. They are the person who did this, by trying to make it about all these larger social issues and trying to make it about this, make it about that, make it about the things that we are passionate about. And I'm not saying people are doing that cynically. Like, some of them are, but but it's also just people genuinely believe that it's that these terrible events have like a simple answer that absolves, or maybe not absolves, but that rises above the individual complicity of the perpetrator. And hopefully that's not what I'm doing by putting my theory forward. I mean, I think I am focusing on, first and foremost, on the people doing this and their individual volition. Like, why are they doing this? I'm certainly not trying to like blame the trend since Columbine and say, oh, that's it. I do think that is the primary motivating factor, but that's just like a reward, a motivation that operates on these people's individual psyches and individual mindsets at the time that they do these things. And so, hopefully I'm not guilty of the same thing, and I might be. Perhaps I'm just as guilty as the people who blame it all on gun culture, or blame it all on I suppose gun culture on either side of it, right? Where it's gun culture in terms of having too many guns, gun culture in terms of not having enough guns, or people who say, well, this is just because we don't have a good enough mental health support network. Like, hopefully I am not, passing the buck in the same way that I kind of consider they are. And like I said, I'm not saying they're doing it cynically. I don't think I'm doing it cynically either. I think this is just what I genuinely feel, and I'm sure a lot of these people genuinely feel the same thing. So, I certainly don't. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong about this. That's kind of my position on these things. Like, I feel very strongly about this. I think if we stop giving people the attention that they are seeking, I think we could stop school shootings, and I think we could stop other mass killings, and I think we could at least make a big dent in how often this happens. But I might be wrong. I fully concede that I might be completely wrong about this. Feel free to tell me if you think I am. If you have a better solution, I would be perfectly happy to hear it. But I'm just putting this out there because I don't feel like enough people recognize that what we need to do is, maybe this wouldn't be ethical. This certainly isn't possible in our current world. But what I would do, I think, is I think what I would do, and this is like my perfect world where I can just convince people to do, whatever I want, whatever I think is best. I think what I would do is, if someone commits a mass killing like this, and and it is clear they were doing it, maybe even if it's not clear, but let's just say if anyone commits a mass killing like this, for whatever reason, when it's reported, when we talk about it, we will report everything that happened, and like the motivations of the killer and everything, and we will disclose the full story. But we will not only not report the name of the killer, like anything personally identifiable, within reason. We will not report any of that. Not only that, but we will retroactively annihilate all mention of this person throughout the historical record. We will redact this person's identity from existence. We will wipe them from the record. It will be as though this person never existed. And so the memory of what they did, of their crimes, will be remembered and will be mourned, and the victims will be mourned and remembered. But this person will not be remembered. This person will be utterly forgotten. It will be as though this person never existed. It will be the complete opposite of what these people want. What they want is recognition. What they want is immortality. What they want is infamy, to live on and to be what they couldn't be in life, to be famous or infamous, to be thought about, to be obsessed over, to be valued. That's what they want in death, by committing these terrible atrocities, and on the pyre of their victims, they want to become a beacon that other people see and venerate and look up to, like the copycats. I mean, that's what they do. They sickly worship these murderers, and they want to be like them, for the reasons I've said. They want that infamy. They want that notoriety, and they want that immortality, and they want to follow in their footsteps. And by eliminating the memory of these people, and I fully acknowledge, I mean, this is just what I would do if I controlled everything. This is just what I would do, I think, if the goal was to just stop this from happening. Because I do believe if we did this, I think it would pretty much eliminate all school shootings, all mass killings. I mean, you would certainly encounter some people who do it just because they're psychotic, and or they just don't care anymore, and they just want revenge. They just want to commit mass murder. I mean, you would certainly have that, but I think it would be, 1 to 2% of how many of these tragedies we have today. I think that's pretty reasonable. I think it would hardly ever happen. It would be like, maybe along the lines of like the pre-Columbine days, where this wasn't a habitual thing. This wasn't something that just happened all the time. I think it would practically eliminate it. And so that's what I would do. That's what I would advocate. But of course, that's not something we can do. There's no way to legally even, prevent people from reporting the name, just the name, of the perpetrator. Today, I wonder if one solution could be, what if it was legally mandated that we not report the name of the perpetrator for a year, like after the tragedy, and then, because then maybe it would kind of diffuse the infamy. Like eventually that information could be released. It would be kind of like, it's not the same thing, but it would be like a national security thing where, like for a time, information is kept secret, but then after a certain amount of time, when it's deemed to no longer be dangerous, it's made public, that kind of thing. Maybe we could do something like that. I don't know. That would still be really, really complicated and difficult to make legal, but maybe something like that, because then there would be like a separation of time between, between the shocking impact of the tragedy on the general public and the knowledge, the revelation of who did it. So like maybe if we did that, because the sad thing is with people becoming desensitized is that, like, I don't know, like school shooting, people still care, of course, but like school shootings from a year ago, it just doesn't have the same impact. And like logically it should. I'm not saying it shouldn't. Just that practically speaking, people kind of, then there's countless more tragedies. And then they just kind of, it just becomes like a constant thing, and they all run together, and people just don't, they moved on to the next thing, as sad as that is and how terrible as that is. But yeah, and so I maybe kind of separating the tragedy and then the revelation of the perpetrator, maybe that would help, because then people wouldn't get like this instantaneous infamy, and they wouldn't, maybe that would discourage them. Maybe that would offer some discouragement for people thinking about doing this. But I would in my perfect world, I mean, and obviously in a perfect world this wouldn't happen at all, but if I could just say, okay, let's do this, and then everyone would go along with it, I would say, let us eradicate the memory of these fame, infamy-seeking killers, and let's erase them from the historical record, like the ancient peoples did. How they would erase all mention of people from the historical record who they thought committed some particularly heinous crime, or just, in their case, it was more often than not, it was for political reasons. It was just and of course, it was someone they didn't like. It was one of their political enemies, and so then they erased their memory from history, which of course is a problem, because then if you start doing this for anyone, of course it does open a huge can of worms, because then people will abuse it. And so that's why I'm not saying like we should actually do this. It's more of just like, theoretically speaking, this would stop it better than these other solutions, I think. Better than these other extreme solutions. I think this would help eradicating the memory of these criminals. But what we can do, we gotta stop being so, we gotta stop giving these people attention as much as we can, as much as is realistic. We have to stop giving these people the attention that they crave. That's what they want. The last thing we want is to give them what they want, because then it'll just satisfy them. It'll give them, it'll satisfy their every wish, and then the next unhinged individual who sets about doing this, who dreams about doing this, who idolizes the killers, is going to be all the more motivated to do it if it works. If it works, they'll do it. If they have an incentive to do it, they'll do it. I mean, that's just common sense. I think we've, at this point we've seen, we've had decades of this happening, and we know that's what's going on. If we're honest, I think we know that's what's going on. And people really just thought about it and like set aside their preconceptions about what was causing it. I think we would admit that, most people would admit that, yeah, it's about infamy. It's about getting infamy. It's about getting recognition. It's about getting attention. It's about, it's about honoring them in a twisted kind of way. It's about giving them the attention that they wanted in life and they felt they could only have in death. By becoming a monster. And people pay attention to monsters, sadly, because they're scared of them, because they're fascinated by them in a twisted way. And so all we can do is try not to give them as much attention as we can, as is practical and as is possible, and just not give them what they want, and let their memories wither away in ignominy as much as possible, or as much as we can let that happen. And I think that's all we can do, because it's like thankfully, so like having lived in Colorado, there's a weird, like, and it makes sense. Like, it makes sense that Columbine is such a cultural touchstone and such a thing that, like, obviously it would almost be weird if it wasn't. Like, it is a big deal, culturally speaking, there. It's a big deal. And because, like, when I was living there, was this, I want to say this was like 2018. Might have been 2019, but I think it was 2018. There was this woman, this crazy woman, from, I think, California, or was it Florida? But she wasn't, I don't think, if I'm remembering correctly, she wasn't from Colorado originally. She, the people who were born there say, Colorado. My habit is saying Colorado, but she wasn't, it's not like she was from the state, if I'm remembering correctly, but she worshipped the Columbine killers, and she flew to Colorado, to like the Denver area, with the intention, at least ostensibly, of committing a mass shooting. Like that was her, that was her goal, and thankfully they stopped her. I think they I don't remember if it was at the airport or if it was after she got off the plane and was just like going to the Columbine, town of Columbine, but thankfully the authorities stopped her, and I think she died in a shootout with them or something. She was killed. She was killed by law enforcement, and she did not succeed in killing anyone, which is good. But she almost certainly, that was, I'm sure realistically that's what she would have done if no one stopped her, because she venerated these Columbine killers and she worshipped them, and she wanted to be like them. And then I could be wrong. This is just what I've read. I think this was like the other day. This was a couple days ago that I read this. So I'm not saying this is, I don't know this for a fact. I could be wrong. Maybe more evidence has come out, but this most recent, the Denver shooter, was also obsessed with the Columbine killers. It was the same thing. I mean, it was the same thing. It was venerating these people, these boys, these men, whatever, who committed this horrifying atrocity so long ago, but their infamy lives on today, like in these crazy death cultists who worship them and who emulate them, who want to be like them. It's terrible, but it's inescapable. That's what's going on. Trying to deny it doesn't solve anything. They're still inspiring copycats today, because that's the magnitude of the cultural impact they had, and the terrible mark they left on American society. Was people are still trying to emulate them and imitate their crimes today, more than 20 years later. And and the same thing, if I'm not same thing, this is what I read at the time that it happened. It's possible that more information has come out that I have not encountered, but my understanding is that the Minneapolis shooter also was not, I don't think she was, she, I don't recall exactly, but that person was venerated mass shooters, venerated mass killers. I don't remember for sure if it was about the Columbine killers specifically, if this person, because I know this person had rifle magazines and things emblazoned with votives